For those who are rich, would you ever consider dating a gold digger? I've dated gold diggers in the past, and I'd even have to say that I'd go as far as to marry a gold digger, as my wife fits the bill. I've made quite a bit of money in my career as an attorney, especially after founding my own firm with an old classmate and taking big class action suits on contingency. However, the bulk of my wealth came from inheritance, through the properties my parents owned, and other investments I've made over the years. I would estimate my net worth to be about $72 million. Gold diggers aren't difficult for me to spot. There were always some giveaways I watched out for, and it's not so much that women know how much money I'm worth, but that they honed in on my title as attorney. I'm not particularly attractive, I'm an average-looking guy, and a bit overweight and out of shape. If I'm not working and I happen to be out with my friends at a bar, club, or event, most women won't bat an eye towards me. But whenever they found out I was an attorney, they immediately became more interested. I remember when I first met my wife, it was at my best friend's younger sister's birthday. I was 32 at the time and hadn't been in a serious relationship in a few years. The party was at a bar, and several of my friend's sister's friends were also there. My wife was one of them. She was a tall 5'9" beautiful redhead with curves and freckles. She looked a lot like Christina Hendricks from Mad Men. We had talked, for a little bit. I found out that she was trying to be a Broadway actress. When I mentioned the Christina Hendricks resemblance, she blushed for a little bit, and before I could even ask for her number she brought up the fact that she had a boyfriend. But she wasn't really interested in getting to know me, she only kept talking about different plays she was in and acting. She had also abruptly left my table to go talk to some of her other friends over by the bar. I remember my friend's sister asked me how I was doing with her friend, which is when she told me she didn't actually have a boyfriend. A little less than an hour later, she was sitting at the bar alone. I got up to get a drink and go talk to her for the second time, until one of my friends, who was intoxicated, came right between us, put his band on my back and turned to her and said, "If you ever need an attorney, hire him. Best attorney in all of New York, he wins $1 million cases all the time." Which is when she perked up and said, "Oh wow, you're an attorney." From there she began asking me about cases I had worked on, what law school was like, and the types of clients I had. We spent the rest of our time at the party talking and eventually went back to my place to spend the night together. Before we went back to my place I remember asking her, "But what about your boyfriend?" Which is when she said, she lied because she wasn't interested in meeting someone that night. Shortly after that night, we began to date, and my friend's sister told me in private one day, "I love you both, but I know her better than you do, she can be a bit of a gold digger. Be careful if you're going to go out with her." I was already wary about her because her sudden interest in me after she found out I was a lawyer kept me alert. Whenever she wanted something, she would also always smile and say, "You're a lawyer, you can afford it." Despite all the warnings, she was still always fun to be around, and she was probably the most beautiful woman I had ever been with. I was in love, and we eventually ended up moving in together. Things took a turn for the worst when I caught her puncturing holes in a new pack of rubbers. I told my friend's sister what had happened, and apparently she one day had said that if she gave birth to my kids she'd be set for life. I eventually sat my wife down, and she had admitted that she was interested in being with me for the money, but that she was also interested in me as a person. I wasn't sure whether she was sincere about the last part, but I felt that she was being the most genuine she had ever been at that point. I also told my wife that I was suspicious of her behavior since we first began dating, and that I was going out with her to see if she could eventually love me as a person. But being in my early to mid-30s at this point, I also realized that I didn't want to start over again with a new relationship. I knew that I wanted to be married and have kids before my parents, who were approaching their 70s, passed away. I told my wife that if our relationship was going to proceed any further, that it would have to happen on my terms. I told her that we'd have to have a prenuptial agreement. Given her behavior, I had to protect myself in case something went wrong. I also told my wife that if something were to happen she'd be out of my will. Since then we've been married over 10 years, and I've kept my finances with her on a pretty tight leash. I give her a small amount of money, $15,000, to spend every month however she likes, but she understands that any big ticket item she wants outside of that, she has to ask me for permission. We now have a big family, 5 kids, 3 daughters and 2 sons, but I can see they've changed her a lot. They're her life now. When we were first married she had no shame in asking me to buy her things like a $150,000 Mercedes G-Class or a new $20,000 Birkin bag. These were things I didn't have a problem buying for her, but she's also realized that she acted like a child in making those requests. She hasn't made a request like that in about 8 years after our oldest was born. When we were car shopping for a bigger car to fit all of our kids, I was shocked when she wanted to look at a Honda minivan, because I remember her saying things like Hondas and Toyotas are for nobodies. My wife now just wants to be a good influence to our kids, especially her daughters. She's thinking about doing volunteer work with kids, or even getting certified to teach the drama class part-time at our kids' school when our 2 youngest are ready for kindergarten. We still live very well, but I can see she's definitely less materialistic. She quit acting and gave up on fame after finding out she was pregnant for the first time with our eldest daughter. On our 10th anniversary she apologized to me because when I proposed she was upset because she wanted a ring from Tiffany's and I instead gave her my grandmother's ring. She cherishes it now, but wants to pass it on to one of our grandkids when they get married in the future. My wife still isn't perfect, and can still be a bit of a snob at times, but I'm proud of the change in attitude she's had, and I love her all the more for it. What's something you've never told anyone? I was dating a college mate for 2 months. I realized she had been cheating on me when I ran into the guy she was cheating on me with, unexpectedly. Well, let's just say she was two-timing. When we realized what was happening, both of us dumped her. But, apparently, she was madly in love with this guy. Now, in the desperation to revive her relationship with this guy, I was framed as a stalker and someone who has been harassing her for 2 months. By her. It worked for her and they were back together within a couple of days. But, her dad was a cop and she belonged to a very politically influential family. An allegation made by her against me quickly escalated into me being picked up by police from my hostel and detained in the police station an entire night. Before a report could be lodged against me the next morning, my principal came to my rescue, as I had built up a good reputation in college. But, I wasn't dismissed of the charges made against me. I was still accused and owed an explanation for harassing this female. No organization or institution would just let someone get away counting on the goodwill he has built. My only proof was the messages we've exchanged over the last few months. I reached my room and noticed my phone to be missing. Note how quickly all the proofs had been eliminated by her aides. When I returned to the principal citing that my phone had been stolen, my credibility further dropped. As it must ideally stand, neither of us had substantial proof to strengthen our claims. But, an allegation by a woman in India, that too of love-making harassment clearly dismisses the man's side of the story and requires proof. The only breather was no legal action could be taken against me, other than a fine of $5,000. Through all this, I couldn't involve my parents as I didn't want them to worry over an incident they can't help. From then on, I was branded as a love-making offender, which made me lose my friends. No one would risk being involved with a guy who has been picked up by police from hostel no matter what he has in his defense. I was shunned by professors when I approached them for academic help. I was removed from all the cultural clubs of the college, including the photography and the music clubs I started. And finally, I had to face her almost every day, standing at the end of her demeaning stare for having had the last laugh. I was gathering a lot of negative energy because of the way I was being treated. It hurt. It turned me into a helpless boy. I was merely 19. The rage was getting beyond my control. This rage had to be employed somewhere. I was clear this negativity shouldn't result in alcoholism or even worse, unaliving. I started playing sports, participated in debates, jams and quizzes. Within 2 years, I turned into one of the most celebrated debaters in the city. I had a record of winning every jam I participated in. I hosted quizzes in various colleges and was representing my college in badminton. I built myself into a person that my college was tempted to claim association with. As a silver lining, I was elected as the cultural head of the college in the final year of my college, which made me in charge of all the clubs I had been earlier thrown out of. While one file held my academic certificates, 2 complete files had my winning certificates across various competitions in the span of 2 years. I was the first student of the college to be placed, eventually holding 4 offer letters by the end of graduation. 5 years after those incidents, I probably am a successful individual in terms of societal norms. Yet, the injustice, the ostracizing, the lonely college life still haunt me even to this today. Within a successful and confident man, hides a gullible boy who is still scared of getting close to people. There is a constant fear of being lied to, cheated or discarded. The fear is the only companion I've got for the rest of my life. What started off as a small lie but then snowballed into this is my life now. My wife thinks we met on the internet. We didn't. We actually met on a bus, almost a full year before we met for the first time. I was utterly captivated by the way she looked, the way she dressed, and oh God, how lucky I felt when she sat down beside me. I deliberately missed my stop just to stay next to her for an extra 30 minutes, and then got off where she did and immediately stopped, pretending to make a phone call as she walked off. I waited until she was too far away to hear me, and seeing that she hadn't looked back at any point, I found the courage to follow her home. With her address at hand, I returned to my own home to try and find the name. I didn't have any luck trawling public records, so in desperation, I had MySpace bring up the profile of every female user in the area. I scrolled through page after page of profile pic thumbnails, and I recognized her instantly. What followed was 9 months of trying to contact her. I didn't rate my chances highly, so I decided to contact her first on some fake profiles to give myself a safe sandbox to get to know her without any risk of my mistakes damaging my chances with her when I felt I knew enough about her to contact her from a genuine profile. It was tough at first. The first 2 accounts didn't even get responses out of her, so I started looking at the profiles of her existing friends and mimicked those, copying their interests and music tastes. I started chatting with her, first from one identity, then from another. At one point I was talking to her under 3 different names at once, each with a different personality, as I tried to figure out who her perfect guy was. Eventually, when I was ready, I friended one of my fake profiles with my real one and then had the fake me invite the real me into a group chat with her. We connected instantly. It was magical. I could always say exactly what she wanted to hear. My sense of humor was perfect, my politics and worldview mirrored her own, and we loved the same music. We had so much in common. It took me just 1 more month to finally meet her in person for the first time. I was absolutely paranoid she'd recognize me as the guy on the bus that one time, but she didn't. 2 years later, I married her, despite our entire relationship being founded on my lies. Whenever I think about it, I feel like a scumbag, a creep, a stalker, or some kind of criminal. But then I look at her and she's here, happy with me still. It's me who suffers with the truth, not her. Asked cute cashier for number, can never return after what I did. For a while in college, my weekly routine consisted of buying groceries at the same store every time. There was this cute cashier, really pretty with short hair and kind eyes. She always had a smile on her face and engaged in small talk with me. She also knew me by name and by face. After I went there with a friend, I realized that her friendliness wasn't really for everyone and that the way she treated me meant something more. She wasn't just being nice, she was actually interested in me. Filled with excitement, I mustered up all my courage and decided to take a chance. The next time I went to the store, I picked her line on purpose. As she handed me the receipt, I had an idea. Trying to be smooth and cheesy, I said, how about you write your number on it? Her cheeks turned a bright shade of red as she bashfully wrote down her number on the receipt. I couldn't help but smile and told her that I would give her a call. My euphoria took over, and I wasn't thinking straight. Usually, I never held on to receipts, but this time I forgot that her number was on it. Without even realizing, I glanced at the receipt for a split second, crumpled it up, and casually tossed it into the trash bin by the store's exit. And worst of all, she saw everything. Panic rushed through me as I realized my blunder. The embarrassment was overwhelming, and I couldn't face going back to that store again. It haunted me, knowing that I had missed such a great opportunity. But I learned a valuable lesson about keeping important things inside and not letting excitement cloud my judgment. Talk about the biggest mess up ever. I don't know what makes me feel worse, what I did to her or the fact that now I can't buy my favorite energy drinks for cheap anymore.